Hello and welcome to this video tutorial. Today we're looking at creating labels for printing at home in Adobe Illustrator. This is a full-length class and we're going to take you from the beginning to finding your templates all the way through to assembling labels ready for printing in Illustrator. The very first thing that you need to do before you can open Adobe Illustrator and start designing your labels is to work out exactly what labels you plan to use. I'm on Avery's website here. Avery is one of the leading manufacturers of labels. It's by far not the only one, but it is a sort of industry standard. Here on the Avery website, I can shop blank labels to use, and so I could go through and determine what sort of labels I wanted to purchase. Now, this site is important for a couple of reasons, not only because it obviously has a huge variety of labels, but also because Avery is sort of designated as one of the standards in the industry. So if you were to purchase labels from a site that did not offer the kind of templates we're about to use in this class, then you may find that for their products, when you go to buy them on the sales page, they will say that this product is the same as an Avery product, and they'll tell you the code name for that Avery product. Or it might be some other company that they will tell you, but Avery is often one that they quote. So what would happen then is if you purchase those stickers or those labels, you could go to Avery's website and find the appropriate template for that Avery stock that is a match for the one you just purchased, and you could use that template to set things up. So effectively, you would be using Avery's template for another manufacturer's product because the manufacturer has designed their product to match Avery's. They just sell it perhaps for a cheaper price. So we're not actually going to be using Avery product this time. We're going to be using some labels from a company called Online Labels. This is the company that is being used by the person who requested this class. So since I needed some labels to use as an example, I thought, well, we'll just use the same ones that she's using. So this is Online Labels, and I've already located the sales page for the product we're going to be using. This is a sort of typical sales page. You're going to see the labels, and you can obviously determine if they're the kind that you want. We'll go down here a bit further and we can view detailed specifications. And here are the specifications for this label. If you needed to set up this label manually, this is the kind of information you would need. So you just copy and paste that because that's really important to you. Luckily, this site will give us some templates so we can continue down. They're also saying here that this product is the same size as some Office Depot and Office Max products and also Uline. So there is a good chance that if we hadn't been supplied with a template for these labels, we could take these product numbers to the Office Depot or Office Max websites or these numbers to the Uline website and see if there was a template that we could use there. In that case, you would probably want to double check the height and width and spacing specifications just to make sure that they were correct, but that would be an alternative for finding a template if you needed to do so. Now, this particular website does have templates for this product number. I just want to show you something that is going to be a little bit disconcerting. I'm going to copy and paste this product number into their area that they offer design templates. So I'm going to the blank templates. I'm going to paste my product number in here and hope to find a template. I'm going to be sorely disappointed. It's not available there, but I just want to show you that you might need to do a little bit of better searching for yourself if that happens to you. Because what's happening here is that OL115 is the product number. The WJ is probably just a code for weatherproof and inkjet. So in actual fact, we need a template for OL115 without the WJ. And you can see up here once I start scrolling down, it does say templates for OL115. So just needed a little bit of research there. The other thing is that we have to go a long way down this page before we actually find the templates. Probably not a really well-designed web page, but it's fine. We've got there in the end. They have blank templates for Maestro Label Designer for Microsoft Word, and they have PDF templates. We're interested in the PDF template because, as they say, the template can be used in graphics programs such as Adobe Illustrator. That's great news for us. We're using Adobe Illustrator. There's also an important piece of information here that we should take note of. If you plan to print out the template, you will need to uncheck Fit to Page in the print options, or the image will be smaller than the actual size. In other words, it's not going to print very well if we don't do that. So if you're keeping a running page of notes at this stage for developing your product, this is something that you will definitely want to put on that page. Make a note that you do have to uncheck Fit to Page before you print, or else things are going to go haywire, and you've been warned that that could well be the case. We're going to click to download this PDF template. We come to this page. I'm going to choose the PDF one, click to download it. Now, at this point, you may be asked for an email address in a pop-up. I've been asked before on this site. It's a little pop-up. You type in your email address and you click the button, and then they automatically let you download the template. So you don't actually have to confirm your email address to be able to do that. So just a warning that you may be prompted. But you can see I've been able to successfully download the template. Having done that, I'm now in a position to start designing the labels that we're going to print on this label product. Before we actually open up our labels template in Illustrator and get started designing our labels, there are a few things that we need to know about printing on labels. And this will be particularly important if you haven't done it before. If you have done it before, you'll probably understand exactly the problems we're about to encounter. So what I'm assuming is that this is your label sheet. It's just two sticky labels on the sheet, and this is the backing paper. And you would feed this through the printer and print your two labels all at the one time. Now, typically, you can add an image to a label, such as these set of strawberries that I've downloaded from Adobe stock. Now, this is a really safe way of printing, because if the paper was to move even slightly in the printer, the chances are that the strawberries are going to print just fine on that label, even if they've moved just a little bit. And so here we're concerned with everything being inside the edge. But this is not the kind of label that we're going to produce. We're going to produce something that is a little more interesting visually than this. And with this comes a problem. So let's see what it is. I've got an image of strawberries here that is the exact size as the label. And that's going to be just fine if we put the paper through the printer exactly right. But chances are it won't go exactly in line. And if it doesn't, this is what could happen. What could happen is that the strawberries image is going to print in part over the backing paper. But worse than that is that it's going to miss part of the label. And so we're going to have a white area on the label. So shifting the paper even slightly in the printer could end up with a very poor printing result. What we're trying to do here is what's called a bleed. We're trying to bleed to the very edge of the sticker. And there are some tricks to getting this to work out perfectly, so we don't end up with bits of our sticker not printing correctly. Here I have another example, and in this case we've got slightly rounded edge labels. It doesn't really matter whether they're round or square, the problems are pretty much identical. So I have an image that's going to go in this topmost label here. It's an image of our strawberries again, and there is some text. Now, if we print off, if we don't line things up, not only have we already determined previously that the strawberries might be at risk, but have a look here and see what the problem is with our text. Here, our text is printing over the edge, and while it doesn't matter too much that the strawberries are printing over the edge because they're going to be flush with the edge of the label, well, at least around these two sides, it is a really big problem for our text in that it is going to be cut off if it doesn't line up absolutely perfectly. So when you're printing, there are things to be aware of. This is the label edge that we're going to see in the template in Adobe Illustrator. This is going to be what we call a bleed line. So what we're going to do is we're going to design our label so that the strawberry image is actually over the edge, and it's going to extend beyond the edge of the label. That means that we can have a little bit of movement in the paper through the printer, and we're still going to cover the whole of this label with the strawberries. And so this is typically called a bleed line. You'll typically want to extend an image like this strawberry image a little bit outside the edge of the label so that you make sure that it prints just perfectly. Now, as far as the text is concerned, our concern is a little bit different. We need to make sure that the text is inside the label. And so we have typically a line that we mark out, or we think about at the very least, to make sure that we place our text well inside here, so that again, if the label moves a little bit, the text is still likely to be appearing completely inside the label and it won't be printing over the edge, so part of it is cut off. So that's what we're going to be considering when we're designing these labels, to make sure that any image that is on the back of the label, on the background of the label, is extended beyond the edges of the label so that it's going to print over the entire label surface. But also we're going to watch out for our text and other objects that are really of concern to us, that we see them on the printed label, and make sure that they're inside this area, well inside the label, so any movement of the paper through the printer is going to be accounted for and our text won't be cut off. It's time now to open up the template that we just downloaded and set it up for use in Illustrator. You're going to click the Open button or go to File, Open. Navigate to where the document is stored on disk. Remember, it is a PDF file, and click to open it. It should open up just fine in Illustrator. I've had it open recently, so I'm going to open it from my recent files list. I've opened it before, but I have not made any alterations to the file, so this is exactly what you're going to see. I'm going to start in the Layers panel because I would like bigger thumbnails. So I'll go to the flyout menu, choose Panel Options, and I'll set the other setting to 50 pixels. That's going to give us a little bit more of a view of what's going on in the Layers panel. What we've been given in this document is a compound path. It is critical that you do not move this. Even 1 or 2 pixels of movement is going to be too much. It will throw off your ultimate printing. So it would behoove us to make this into what's called a template layer. You do that by double-clicking on the actual layer. You don't do it to anything inside the layer. A template layer is an entire layer. So we'll double-click on this and we'll set it to template. Illustrator is suggesting it's going to dim the images to 50%. It's not, but it's telling us it's going to do that. As you see, it didn't do that. So what I'm going to do is unlock this layer temporarily. I'm going back to my compound path and I'm going to the Appearance panel. You can get to that by choosing Window and then Appearance. There will be 3 opacities here, 1 for stroke, 1 for fill, and there's an overall opacity for this shape. Select the overall one, the one at the bottom, and just dial it down to about 50% so that we can do what Illustrator didn't do and actually make this a proper template layer. I'm going to close up this disclosure triangle here to just hide everything, and I'm going to lock it by just clicking in this empty spot here that locks and unlocks the layer. Now that's a template layer, and it's really useful because we can't select it, we can't move it, it's protected. We also can't draw anything on it, so if we need to be able to draw in this document, which we do, we're going down here to the very bottom of the Layers palette, and we're going to click on the plus sign to create a new layer. All our content's going to go on this layer. We're now going to zoom into this very top label because we need to draw out a rectangle that is going to be the area in which our label is going in. Now it would help us if we change the color of this, so let's go and select a red color. I'm about to click OK here. Have a look and see what happens to that color when I do. Yep, it's gray. We'll talk about that in a minute and we'll fix it, but for now let's just go to the rectangle tool. I'm going to draw out a rectangle that is only marginally larger than the underlying label. So I'm just going to select that. I'm going to the Transform panel. You can go to that also by choosing Window and Transform. It will really help us if this rectangle was a whole number of pixels, because we're ultimately going to make a document this size that we're going to assemble a label in, and making a document that is these kind of dimensions is not appropriate. So I'm just going to up arrow it until I get to 221. I'm going to kick up the height a little bit more. I think something like about 78 will be better here. I'll also try and arrange this top left corner of the rectangle in a whole pixel position. So I'm just going to make that 83 and I'm going to make it 33. So I'm just using nice even values. So you can see my rectangle is nicely positioned around the label. It's just the wrong color. So the wrong color situation is a creation of the PDF, the way that the PDF was created. There are a couple of things that we need to do here. Firstly, we need to select an object that should be in color, anything. And then we'll choose edit and then edit colors. And we're going to choose either convert to CMYK or convert to RGB, one of which is going to be available. In this case, it's CMYK, but it might just as easily have been RGB. Whichever one's available, you're going to click it. Make sure you have something selected before you come into this menu, because if you don't, those options are not available. This is really unhelpful stuff. So let's go back again to edit colors. The only thing I can choose here is CMYK. I can't choose RGB, although I want an RGB document. I'm going to take the next nearest thing. Having done that, I can now select the color. So with my rectangle selected, let's go back to that red. Let's select it. It's showing here. Click OK, and things are a whole lot better this time. The issue is that I still have a CMYK document and I want to be working in RGB. So now I'm going to File and then Document Color Mode. And here I can choose between RGB and CMYK. I'm going to choose RGB. You can see up here in the Document tab that I'm now working in an RGB document. You will probably need to do that with most templates that you download. It's really inconvenient. It's really sort of fiddly, but that's what we live with. I'm going to press Control and 0 to zoom back out. What I want to do is to take this rectangle here and duplicate it across here. And then I'll take both of these and duplicate them all the way down the page. I'm going to do that with a transform effect because it's just going to make things really efficient later on. But there is a trick to this. If you've used the transform effect previously, you will probably be familiar with using it on a shape. Well, we're not going to do that this time. We're going to do it on a layer, and we're going to do it on a layer for a really good reason, which is going to be apparent a little bit later on. But trust me, we're doing it to the layer. So we're going to select the layer, even though that selects the rectangle as well because we've got the layer selected. The transform effect is actually going to be applied to the layer, not to the rectangle. So we're going to choose Effect, Distort, and Transform, and then Transform. I'm going horizontally first. So I need one extra one of these. So I'm going to click in the copies and make that one. One original plus one copy. And then I need to move this box horizontally. And since the box is 221 pixels in size, it's going to have to be moved horizontally at least 221. When I drag over here, the maximum value I can get to is 100. That's the maximum value I can get to if I drag, but if I type, I can go anywhere I like. And if I press the up arrow, I can keep going even further. So what I'm going to do is take this out now to, looks like 224 is going to suit us really well here. Let's just click OK and let's go and have a look at it. That looks pretty evenly positioned between these two labels. I'm not sure if I can get it any closer. We can have a look. Let's go to the Appearance panel. When we've got the layer selected, in the Appearance panel, we can see the transform effect. Let's just click that and see if 225 would be better. You know, it might be a bit better. Let's just do that. I'll click OK. Next up, we want to take the pair of rectangles and move them down the page. We have 9 stickers or 9 labels in total, so that's one original plus 8 copies. Again, I'm going to click on the layer because this transformation also has to be done to the layer. I'm going to choose Effect, Distort, and Transform, and then Transform, and I'm going to get an alert because Illustrator wants to make sure that I didn't want to edit this previous effect. It's saying, if you want to edit this previous effect, that's not how you do it. You do it through the Appearance panel. But if you're really serious about applying a new effect, which we are because we want to do a second one, then you can click Apply New Effect. It's just a warning to get you out of trouble. We need to move this down, and we need one original plus 8 copies. So let's go and put in our 8 copies. And then the vertical height of this box when I set it up was 78. So we're going to need to move at least 78. So let's just go and see what 78 looks like. Not quite far enough. So let's just press the up arrow until we get a better value. 81 is a good value. I'm going to click OK and we're going to check this. What we need to do is to make sure that in moving this down, that we haven't moved it so far that it's starting to creep forward, or we haven't moved it so little that it's starting to creep up. And sort of pixel by pixel, the last one of these rectangles isn't in the same position relative to the label that it's surrounding as the first one was. If you need to make edits to it, that's just fine. Select your layer, and here at the top is the first transformation we made, the one that goes horizontally, and this is the vertical one. So they're stacked in order of the order that they were made. This is the first one, this is the second one. To be able to edit either of them, you just click on them and you open up that transform panel just over again, and you could make changes to whatever it is that you need to make changes to. So we've now set up this document and it's going to be ready to use. Before you leave the document, you will need to know how big this rectangle is. So you can write that down. It's 221 by 78. We're going to need that in just a minute. What we need to do now is to save this file. So I suggest that you choose File and then Save As, and that you save it as an AI file. So we're going to choose File and then Save As. From the Save As Type drop-down list, we're going to select Adobe Illustrator. Then you can select the location that you want to put the file in, or you can click Browse Folders to go and browse folders. Let's give it a different name. So I'm going to call it Label Setup for OL115AI, and then I would just go ahead and click Save. And that document is now ready for us to use to assemble our labels. In the next video, we're going to create the actual labels that we're going to be using. Having set up our template document ready to receive our labels, it's time to create our label. I'm going to click New File and I'm going to create a document 221 by 78 pixels. That's the size of the rectangle that we drew on the template document. I'll click Create. So this is the size that we're going to assemble our label. It's a little bit bigger than the label because we're going to put a photograph on the background here, and we need to make sure that it's going to be over the edge of the label in case things move in printing. I'm going to draw a rectangle that's going to show us where the label itself is. So I'm going to make sure that it is a hollow rectangle, and I'm going to just click on the rectangle tool. To draw it, it needs to be the same size as the label, which was 3 inches wide. So if I just type 3IN, Illustrator is going to do the calculation for me. And 1IN is going to give me the number in pixels. Basically, it's 72 pixels per inch here. And so that's going to give us the right size rectangle. But I prefer to let Illustrator do the math. So relative to the document, this is the actual area that is going to represent our label. I'm not worried about the rounded corners because they're not relevant, but this will give us a general idea as to what the label size is going to be. Remember too that when we were discussing making these labels, we had to protect our text. And so I'm going to create a different rectangle for the text. I'm just going to use blue here because I know I'm going to be using strawberries as my image. And so blue is going to stand out quite well over an image of red strawberries. Now, in terms of what our text area should look like, the area in which we can pretty safely place our text and it's unlikely to be cut off even if our paper moves a little bit, we need to think about how much room we're going to leave. This is 1 inch. And so if we want to allow, for example, 1/8 of an inch at the top and 1/8 of an inch at the bottom, that's 1/4 of an inch. So the text area, the box for the text area would need to be 1/4 of an inch less than the height of the document. So let's just go to the rectangle tool and let's deal with the height. So I'm going to use 0.75 inches because that will give me 1/8 of an inch and 1/8 of an inch here. If I work on the same principle for the width, I started off with a 3-inch wide document, so subtracting 1/4 of an inch is 2 3/4. So I'm going to make the width of it 2 3/4 inches, the height 54, well, it was 0.75 inches. Illustrator's just converted that to pixels for me. And so let's square that up too. So what we're looking at here is this is the label, this is our text safe area, and this is the bleed, this is the area tool, the line to which any image that we want to print over the edge of the label should appear. So let's go and grab our layers palette because we're going to need that, and let's open everything up. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so that I can see my label and my layers palette at the same time. Now I'm going to use an image of strawberries on the back here, and we're going to use an image from Adobe Stock. So I'm going into Libraries. I've got the ability to search Adobe Stock, and I'm just going to look for strawberries. And the first image is just fine for me. Now, this is Adobe Stock. If you're going to use it commercially, you have to pay for it. But you can use it for mock-ups. And a mock-up is traditionally something that if you were selling these labels to somebody, they said, look, I want you to design this label for me. And so you're starting to design the label, but you're not sure whether they're actually going to like it. They may not like it. So you can use a sort of placement image in terms of showing them what it's going to look like. But before you print it and before you use it commercially, you absolutely have to pay for it. And people have got into a lot of trouble by not doing so. So just be aware that all we're doing is getting a preview into my collection. I've actually done it before here. This is a preview we can use just to test it's okay. Because if our client comes back and says, no, don't like it, we don't want to have paid for stock imagery that we're not going to use. However, if our client comes back and says, yes, I do like it, or if we decide that we are going to use it for a product that we're going to use ourselves or use commercially, sell commercially, then we absolutely have to pay for it at that point. But so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag this out of the libraries, and then I can just size it. Now, I'm just going to drag it out because it's not in the proportions of my document, but that's just fine. So I'm just making it as big as I can to actually cover my document. So I'm looking here as it's over the edge here, it's over the edge here. Now I need to crop it to my document size. So let's go back and create a rectangle. This time I'm going to make it a filled rectangle because it's going to be easier to identify what's going on. I need to remember what my document size was. The original document I just created. It was 221 by 78. I'm going to click in the document and I'm going to make a rectangle the exact same size, 221 by 78. And I'm going to square it up. And I want to make a clipping group of this. So I want to clip the strawberry image to this size. And you do it by creating a rectangle. It doesn't have to be a filled rectangle. I'm just doing it because it's easier to see and to make sure that our strawberry image is bigger than our rectangle so that we're not going to have empty bits left over. So I'm going to select my rectangle. I'm going to select my strawberry image. The rectangle that we're using as a clipping guide has to be on top, the strawberry image on the bottom. As soon as I set this up, the blue rectangle is going to disappear, the excess strawberry image is going to disappear, and this area is going to be filled with strawberries. So let's just right-click and choose Make Clipping Mask. And there we have it. The strawberry image is the exact size of the document. I'm going to move it to the bottom because I want to see my guides on top. I'm going to scale it down a bit so I can see what I'm doing. You can see that the actual usable area of our label is perilously small. This is tiny. So that's why it's really useful to draw these rectangles out so you get a really good look at what you can use and what is not usable. So this area around here is just there to make sure that the strawberries bleed to the edge of the label. And this blue area in here is our text safe area. So if the label moves a little bit, bits of our text are not going to get cut off. I think that I've been possibly a little bit conservative on this, but this is only 1/8 of an inch. It's not very much at all, even though on the screen it looks really, really big. So just be aware of the fact that you're working with something that physically on the screen looks really big, but in reality, when you print it out, it's going to be quite small. So let's start with our text. I'm going to choose the type tool. I'm going to use white type because not much else is going to show up particularly well on top of these strawberries. I'm going to click in the document to start typing. And obviously the default font that I'm using is inappropriate and its size is enormous. So I know the size I need is going to be around 12 points. I also know that the font I'm going to use is not going to be the one that was my default font. I'm going to use this one. It's called Melgatha. And I'm just going to type my strawberry fields. I've lost my color, but I'll get that back in a minute. So having typed this, I'm now going to my type tool. I'm going to select over this. I think I can actually get quite a bit bigger type. So I'm going to take it up a bit bigger and I'm going to make it white. If there are other options for your typeface, you'll find them here. This particular typeface only has the current option. So let's just move it down into position a little bit better. Again, I think I could go a little bit larger, so I'm going to try that. I don't want to be putting the bottom part of the Y or any part of this text too close to this blue line because, again, that is the text safe area. I'm also a little bit concerned because white on the background here is going to start being lost where the strawberry is quite light. So one of the ways that you can separate text from an actual image is to put a shadow on it. Effect, stylize, and then drop shadow. Now, I've already been in here and worked with this drop shadow, so I'm not showing the actual defaults. So I'm just going to tell you what I did. Multiply is generally the default for a drop shadow, so you can leave it at that. I think the default opacity is 75%. I've increased that to 100%. The offsets typically are 7 and 7, and that's way too big here. I've brought it back to just a 1 pixel offset, so it's just around the back of the text. The blur is typically 5 pixels. I brought that down to 1. So basically we're operating really, really low values, and I'm just going to click OK. And you'll find that that just lifts the text off the page a bit. I'm seeing some pixelization here. Now, the reason for this is that these effects like drop shadow are raster effects, so they're pixel-based. They're not going to be nice and smooth like the text. But I'm also looking at this document at 400%, so if I took it down to 100%, it wouldn't look as pixelated. In fact, it probably wouldn't look pixelated at all. So just be aware of that. I'm going to add some more text in here. I'm just going to make it clear that this is a homemade red jelly. So I'm going to click on the type tool. I'm going to click somewhere out of the way of everything because it's a little bit difficult not to pick something up as editing the text or trying to put type on a line. Let's see if that worked. No, it didn't. So what I'm going to do is go to the layers palette and I'm going to lock down everything. If I lock down everything, then when I go to put my type in, I won't be able to edit this because it's locked down. And so Illustrator has no choice but to put it not on top of something else. So let's try that much better. I'm going to do all caps. Obviously, you would never use a font like this in all caps, so I'm actually going to choose a different font. What I'm looking for is Anton, and Anton only comes in the regular, so I'm going to use that. I'm also going to decrease the font size because it is huge. Let's just move away and see what we've got. Well, again, I want my font to be much smaller, and I want to be using white. I'm going to make sure it's sitting just inside what I think is going to be my text safe area. This white font here has got the exact same problem as the Strawberry Fields font in that it needs to be lifted off the document. So let's just unlock everything. This little button here belongs to Strawberry Fields, and because it's got a sort of filled in area there, that's telling us it's got an appearance on it. I can take this appearance and drag and drop this onto this piece of text. So what I'm going to do is as I click here, I'm going to hold down the Alt or Option key, Alt on a PC, Option on a Mac. You can see that little plus sign, and I'm just going to drag it up here. And what that does is it applies to this piece of text all the attributes that this piece of text had. And the only attribute that this piece of text had that is basically of interest to us right now is that drop shadow. So the drop shadow has just been mimicked, if you like. So both these pieces of text have the same drop shadow. If I turn these two rectangle layers off, we can see what our label is going to look like. Our label is going to be a little bit smaller than that because there is going to be a bit of the strawberries outside that's going to be cut off. But basically, that's what our label looks like. In the next video, we're going to take this and put it in the template document ready for printing. In the last video, we made this label. The only thing I've done since then was to actually save the file. I've also reopened our setup so that we have that handy. What I'm going to do now is to just turn off these two rectangles because I don't need them. I'm going to copy this label. So I'm going to drag over everything here and I'm going to choose Edit and then Copy. Then we'll go to our template document. I'm going to zoom in here so I can see the box in the top left corner. That's the one that we're going to assemble our label into. But remember that when we set this up, we had transformations. We had a transformation across here and one all the way down the page. Right now, if we start pasting our element into here, what's going to happen is that things are going to start being really, really messy. So this is what I suggest you do, that you go to the Appearance panel and open it, that you select this layer so that you have it targeted, which will give you access to the appearances for the layer. And these are the two transformations. What you're going to do is turn both of them off. So we can just focus in this rectangle here, and anything we do is only going to affect this rectangle, and the transformation's not going to appear until we want it to appear. So I'm just going to tuck that panel away and let's go back up here. I'm going to target the rectangle here because I want to paste in above that, and I'll choose Edit and then Paste. Everything is still selected, so I'm not going to move anything except go and grab my selection tool and drag everything that I just pasted in and line it up with that red box. And it's now lined up with the red box. I don't need the red box any longer, so I can turn it off. So we've got our text, another piece of text, we've got our clipped strawberry image. Everything is in this layer and everything is looking perfectly aligned. All we have to do now is to put it in all these other labels. Well, we already had the tool that would do that. It's just we turned it off a minute ago. So let's go back to our Appearance panel. I'm going to reselect my layer, so I need to target my layer because until I do that, I'm not going to see these transforms. They can disappear and it can be disconcerting because you think you've lost them, but you haven't. So with this layer selected, I can get my transforms back. Let's click on both of them. And now we have a document that is set up with our labels. Every single one of our labels is in position, ready for printing. At this stage, I would save this with a different name. So you're going to call it Strawberry Fields or whatever, and you can do a test print of this. If you don't want to waste your label stock, then you could just print this onto plain paper. If you print it onto plain paper, then you would hold it up against the label stock to the light, so have a strong light source behind it. You should be able to see the edges of your label stock. You should be able to see the printed label on a piece of plain paper, and you'll be able to see whether everything's lining up correctly before you start using your actual physical labels. Remember, of course, that when we go to print this, we're going to choose File and then Print. We were warned when we downloaded these labels that we cannot scale them. So here is the option of Fit to Page, and that's not what we want to use. We want to make sure that we choose Do Not Scale, because that will send this document out at its current size and it will print onto the label stock correctly. If you scale it at all, you're going to shrink your document. Your labels don't shrink, and so nothing's going to line up properly. So just be aware of that when you're actually printing the document. If you like carefully researched content like this, clearly presented in a step-by-step format so that you can get great results, then you'll love my Skillshare content. I'm a Skillshare top teacher. I have hundreds of short courses on Skillshare that you can access along with thousands of other great courses, all for the price of a single subscription. If you're interested, there's a Skillshare coupon for you in the description below to use to sign up. Using this coupon benefits me as a creator, and it helps me continue to make free content available here for you also on YouTube. Thank you for joining me for this video tutorial. On the screen now, you'll see a video that I've hand-picked for you. If you enjoyed the video you've just watched, I know that you're going to really enjoy the one I've picked for you to watch next.